Well, hello there. This is Louis, aka Louis the Frenchie Monette, and you're listening to the Frenchie Watches. On today's episode, we are watching The Great Dictator, the Charlie Chaplin movie. And my guest today, he's making his comeback. It's his third time on the show. It's Soda. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Louie. I'm doing okay. How about you?
It's just, I would live in a pool right now, to be honest with you, but it's doing good.
Good to hear.
All right, so yeah, let's get into this. This movie was not picked as I usually pick it. I usually have more of a uh, random system to pick a movie. This one was actually selected by you, and with great reason. The Great Dictator is a movie I haven't seen in a long time, but it's very prevalent. There's a lot of messages, and I'm sure there's a lot of trivia to talk about. So let's go right into it. For you, what do you think overall about this movie generally?
Well, I think it's a really good movie. It's one of his better works, and I think it is one of those rare instances of a movie that was made almost 100 years ago that still stands the test of time and is actually very relevant.
Mm,
A couple years ago, I sat down with some friends of mine who'd never actually seen a Chaplin film, and this is the one I showed them just because I didn't want to show them one of his silent films or anything. I figured I'd show them this one because it was his first true talkie,
mm.
and they got it right away. They were into it. It was probably I'd say it's probably his more accessible film that he's done.
Yeah, it's funny hearing him talk, right? Like I've seen a lot of the silent movies as well, and he created a style onto its own by being silent movies. That being said, this movie is very it's not what you would expect necessarily in a Charlie Chaplin movie. Yes, there's a lot of physical comedy, but there is a really interesting story. There is gags that serve as double meanings. There is things that, because it's related to the war, makes even more of an impact. Although now rewatching it is not a perfect movie. Obviously, it's a classic, right? So there are things that today's standards wouldn't hold up, but that's normal. The only gripe I would have technically is the story itself being divided into two characters is fine. I would have preferred just to follow the Great Dictator and find a way to still talk about the other side, like the people story in a different manner. But else than that, it's a classic for a reason. Charlie Chaplin is a master of physical comedy, and that does not change. Especially for me, the best part would be the beginning with the spinning bullet.
Mm,
That part always gets me because it's so random and it's so ridiculous, but at the same time, it's a scary thing. This is like a bomb, and he
yeah,
treated it as a just a comic relief, then the silliest way that works for its time. Today's age, maybe not. And also the upside down plane when he realized that he doesn't realize, but everything's dropping his pocket watch. And that part also really fits that time, that kind of comedy.
yeah, and like not only is he a master of slapstick comedy, he is a master of pathos, of conveying emotion through his motions, his movement.
Hmm.
And the best example of that is the scene with the globe,
Yeah.
which funnily enough when they showed pictures of Hitler's palace, which I'm not even gonna bother pronouncing the name of that, that actually was something that is was legit in Hitler's office, and for some reason Chaplin zoned in on that because it essentially represented to him like Hitler's Hitler's view of himself as like a god,
Mm,
as like the ruler of the world.
mm.
And when after Hitler was disposed of and they went to that same palace, everything was in shambles. But oddly enough, that globe was the one thing that survived.
Huh.
Yeah,
Huh.
it's very. There are a lot of interesting parallels between Charlie Chaplin and Adolf Hitler. Like they were born on the same week, on the same month of the same year, in
Hmm.
August of 1889. When Charlie Chaplin started becoming famous as the little tramp, Hitler was actually living as a tramp in Austria because he got rejected out of from a Vienna art school, and he
Hmm.
kind of fell into a depression and became homeless and whatnot. And while Chaplin was, became this big, fast, famous figure and was making movies like Shoulder Arms, making fun of the Kaiser and what have you, Adolf Hitler was in the war,
Hmm.
fighting for the Kaiser, and like Hitler's mustache came from Charlie Chaplin because he viewed it as a way to be accepted by the people. Because Chaplin at that time was the most famous person in the world, more famous than any United States president, more famous than probably the kings and queens. Like he was the most famous person in the world at that time.
Well, then in that case, it almost seems like Hitler actually admired Chaplin. So this movie is kind of slap in the face for Hitler.
Not really, because it turns when they were going through Hitler's effects after the war and all the Nazi stuff, trying to get the Nuremberg trials started, they found records that of movies that Hitler watched because he was a notorious film buff, and he
Hmm.
actually had watched The Great Dictator, and then 2 days later watched it again. And in the documentary I just watched, which I highly recommend, it's called "The Tramp and the Dictator." They interviewed a gentleman named Reinhard Spitze, who was actually part of Hitler's inner circle, and he said,
Hmm.
"Yeah, Hitler was an intense man, but if you knew him, he actually had a sense of humor, and he did laugh at himself quite a bit. So it sounds like he actually enjoyed the movie."
Interesting. Well, since we are talking about trivia, let's go to the trivia part. Um, so okay, so he knew who Charlie Chaplin was. That's interesting. Like that dynamic, I did not know at all. That's a bit of a
Yeah.
gap in my historical knowledge. But that's interesting. Is there anything else, like maybe concerning the movie producing or
Well,
something?
yeah, for sure. Like you gotta understand where the world was at, and when Chaplin announced this movie in 1938, like Hitler was in power, but nobody knew about all the atrocities that he had committed by at that point. And a lot of like Hollywood generally ignored him. A lot of foreign governments actually tried not to upset him.
Hmm.
They tried more to work with them. Like Hitler was viewed as somebody who was actually doing good things. Like he helped the depression recede in Germany. Like he created jobs, infrastructure, whatnot. So a lot of a lot of people, especially businessmen, were viewing him as a benevolent person. But there were some people, Charlie Chaplin included, who believed that was a bunch of BS. And so when he announced this movie in 1938, he was met with a lot of pushback. Like Great Britain said that they would, which is his home, Chaplin's home country, they said that they would not distribute the film. And when the movie was released, it was not just distributed in most of Europe and in Ireland and South America. It was met with a great deal of controversy. And at that time, it was ballsy. Like you did not do that to somebody, especially
Hmm.
somebody as potentially dangerous as Adolf Hitler. But 6 days before the filming started, Hitler he started his major push, and then World War One, two, sorry, had started 6 days prior to shooting of the film.
Hmm.
So yeah, so he was making this during the early days of World War II, and a lot of big historical moments happened during the filming of this movie because it took almost 2 years to make. Because Chaplin was a notorious perfectionist, and they said that he himself was almost like a benevolent dictator on the set. Except for this movie, where for some reason he kind of became enraptured in himself. But yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, the day filming ended was the day that Hitler went into France to view the spoils of his war.
Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting. What was Chaplin a political person?
he considered himself a humanist. Like I believe it was prior to the filming of this, he actually went on a 16-month tour of the world and met with a bunch of like political figures like Gandhi and Churchill and stuff. And so
Hmm.
he was very much interested in the human race. And the movie he made prior to this, Modern Times, was actually his first foray into political filmmaking,
Okay.
because it was made essentially during the Great Depression, and it was his views on industrialism and what have you. And at the time, Henry Ford was like probably the biggest industrialist in the world, and he actually there's the boss of the factory that Charlie Chaplin works at. He looks suspiciously a lot like Henry Ford, who turns out was a Nazi sympathizer and a notorious anti-Semitic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, he that's one thing he's remembered for today, is being very anti-Semitic. No matter what he great things he did for the car industry.
Interesting.
Yeah. So no, Charlie Chaplin was very political, and this was, you could argue that this was a personal film for him because everyone always assumed he was Jewish, which he was not, but it's
Huh.
something he
Okay.
never denied because his half brother Sidney, who was also his business manager, and he was very close with, was Jewish. Same mother, different father.
Okay. So he's half.
Yeah, his brother was, well, no, not Charlie Chaplin. His brother was.
Well, if it's brother, if unless it.
Yeah, he has Jew. Yeah, his brother had Jewish roots through his father.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, and it's funny too because, like, I can say this: if it was during the war itself, it was filming, right? I wonder how much they adapted on the fly on news we're getting every day, because the whole raiding houses, the whole way they would round up people and certain certain criteria of how the movie soldiers acted. There's some stuff a bit based on real life. So if this was happening at the same time, he must have like maybe rewritten certain things on the fly, or
Oh yeah, he was. That's another thing he was very notorious for. Like I said earlier, he was a perfectionist, and when they did the reshoots, by that point they had torn down the whole ghetto set, and he had it all rebuilt. The ending itself had changed. Originally, it wasn't that speech. It was more of like everyone kind of like dropped their weapons and had a happy dance, but that didn't really work. And actually, I found this out watching that documentary that actually it was filmed in secret. There was
okay,
no advertisement for it. It was all done on like because by that point Charlie Chaplin was powerful enough that he could make his own movies on his own dime, distribute them himself.
okay,
So yeah, no, it was kept very secret from the public, and it wasn't until he finished they finally finished filming and stuff that he, you know what, it's time, and he showed it to people. Like people knew he was making it. He had announced it, but I mean nobody knew what was going on.
yeah, because the Great Dictator can be a lot of things,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Especially if it wasn't a popular opinion that Hitler was going to be a dictator. So yeah, that's really interesting. I'm so happy to have you back, sir. It's the trivia part is not something I'm the best with, so I'm really happy, especially for this kind of movie, a historical movie, a movie with a lot of weight. I'm really happy you suggested this movie.
Yeah, it's I find it's very prevalent, especially in the time that we're living in now with everything that's going on. Like that final speech that he gives at the end,
Yeah.
it wasn't the Jewish barber, it wasn't Hinkle, it was Charlie Chaplin that was saying that to the world.
Yep.
And it's still very prevalent. It's actually
Well,
when I was in high school, it's actually a speech I did for a drama class.
well, before we go into psychology, I actually want to play that the audio version of that speech. So, if possible, if you can send me.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of doing that right now.
All right.
Yep. I just had to step away for a moment to grab my phone, but I will send that to you. And there we go. Because yeah, it's a speech that I think everybody should hear.
Yeah, it's sad at the same time to think that certain things he say still applies to today, and
Yeah,
the battle against these type of personalities in power is still prevalent in today's age. But it
yeah,
is, yeah,
that's something about being a genius is you can definitely pick up on something and know it'll stand the test of time.
yep. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, I have
Darn it,
sent you the audio.
I can't download it though.
Okay.
All right, you're gonna have to share screen. Sorry about this, listeners. Uh, have the fun times doing a live recording.
Yeah, no kidding. Just give me one moment to boot up my iTunes. So yeah, no. While I'm doing that, if you want to talk a little bit more about the psychology and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I did want it to wait for the audio clip, but at the same time, it's scary because you said it yourself, right? At first, people viewed Hitler as someone who's trying to do good. He put some things in place, but the hidden agenda, the hidden emotions, frustration, and more what power does to someone, especially when they don't come from a right place, is reflective to today's day and age. Now, I'm not here to get political. I'm not here to, you know, say which sides is better. One thing though I am realizing is we are living unprecedented times, especially in the media age. Things happen all the time throughout the history of humanity, but this is the first time we're always bombarded by it, and it's scary because I'm uncertain of what's going to happen in the future, uh, because things don't seem to get better. Even like 60, 70 years ago was the same issue. There's this moment of where people realized, you know, the life that I'm living today can change in one day, in 2 days, in a week, an event,
Hmm.
and then life flips on its head, and it's not something that they could have imagined themselves, right? It was every day, and then something happened, and then boom, they're getting invaded, and then boom, they're getting persecuted, like in the movie too. That's what's happening today's day and age, and it takes an event,
Yeah.
a moment, and then we live unprecedented times, and that's where we are sadly. The world, not just America, the world. There's so many things happening that everything is shifting at the same time.
Hmm.
All right, so you ready, sir?
Yeah, you're definitely not right. I'm ready. Did you get to work? Oh, right. Yeah, sorry, my
It's
computer's
you.
being a little slow. If you wouldn't mind actually looking for it on YouTube.
Oh, okay. You know the
Oh,
audio
now
though.
my computer starts to work. Yeah, no, the audio. Yeah, you can just yeah,
Okay, so what I'll do, improvising.
yeah. My
All right,
computer's
so
being really slow right now.
open up here.
Oh, hold on. I've actually got my iTunes up and running. Hold on. Spinal speech from the great dictator. Okay, sure. Get on YouTube. Sorry for this, folks. This is my first time doing this shared screen stuff. Oh, I can't bring it on my entire screen. Can you see my thing, Lou?
Let me see. Yeah, but you no, you put it on your computer. You have to
Okay,
do
hold on.
application window and not your entire screen.
Okay, yeah, mind doing that? I've never done this before, so
All right.
it'd be easier to do it. You can find it on YouTube, no problem.
I'll go here. All right. Let's hope the audio works.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that. Yeah, I didn't know you
Mhm.
could do that on your web browser.
Do you hear it? Do you hear it, Soda?
No, no, I do not.
All right. Well, this is not going as planned. All right. Okay. Well,
I
being
could do
said.
it if I hold it up to my if I could do it if I hold my phone up to my mic because I do
Okay.
have the speech on my phone.
Okay. So let's go old school getaways.
Yep. Okay, let's do this.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world. A decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
So yeah, no, that speech written 80 years ago, but still very resonant today.
Yeah, and the two words, very simple words, but very meaningful to today's age. You people.
Yeah,
World
exactly.
countries should, be for the people. Now, there's places better than other places and better subjective. It's, every country, every living place has ups and downs, advantages, disadvantages. That being said, when we live in a day and age that everything is so fragile, nothing seems to be advancing. And we got, politicians in general, politics, government in general is now more about deadlines and the how much they can profit and their ties with companies and this and that. The people get lost. And in today's day and age, we can see what a manifestation is. Not just in the US. There's some in Canada too. There's some in the world. It's not just about what's happening in the US. It's just intolerance in general. It's been going on for way too long.
Yeah, what everyone forgets is yes, we are Canadians, we are Americans, we are British, we are Germans, but above all else, we're humans. And
Yep.
that's what everyone forgets. It's yeah, we may grow up differently, we may even look differently, but at the end of the day, we all know the same similar struggles. We're all go through the same BS, the same highs, the same lows. If you take away our skin, we look no different from anyone else underneath. And that's what people forget is that we are humans first.
We definitely are humans first, but it rare is someone in power, actually acts on it, because the population might be human. There is intolerance, there is stupidity, but what really doesn't help is when people who have the potential to change things, who it's in their fingertips to, make certain rulings and certain like stuff to regulate the country that can make a difference, even though it's not easy and sometimes goes against certain interests. They have the power to do it, but they forget what human is to be, And that's what's got to change these days. And that's what the message of Charlie Chaplin is so strong, you know? You have the power to construct the machinery, you have the power to take it back. And it's really now in today's day and age with social media, everything's accessible.
Yeah.
And with what's happening, you know, uh,
And
everyone's involved.
that
Everyone's
message
involved.
is starting to come to fruition because the people are finally starting to have enough. They're finally starting to rally with their brothers and their sisters. They're finally getting change done. In my opinion, should have happened earlier, but that message is finally happening. The people have had enough, and they are standing their ground.
Yeah, and the people had that, and that's important. I find to really look at. The people have had enough for a long time. It's just now they had enough, and they actually have the cojones to do
Mm-hmm.
something about it. You know, to the point, and it shows again what power in the wrong hands can do. Because again, we're all human, right? And this is more targeted what's going on in the US, but
Mm-hmm.
when things are going, shit's going on the roof here. This is about to go down, and there's just more menaces. There's even less showing of flexibility and understanding. And okay, let's work on this. No, it's basically let's cause a civil war. Almost, it feels
Yeah.
what this president is doing in the US. At this point, what is the difference between a president and a dictator?
You're 100% right. And as I said earlier, like before Hitler's I'm not, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the president of the United States is anywhere near
No,
Hitler. I will
for
never say
sure.
that. But like I said earlier, before Hitler's atrocities became known, people were trying to appease him and,
Yeah.
weren't speaking up because they were afraid. And you're definitely seeing that now. A
Mm.
lot of, I guarantee you, there are a lot of his subordinates of the president of the United States who are too afraid to speak up because believe it or not, Donald Trump is a very powerful man. Believe it, no matter what you want to believe about him, he is a very powerful man. He usually gets his way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Don't we? That's something that fascinates me with humans, right? Especially if you weren't born in that era, it's just history. We don't learn from our mistakes,
No.
right? Especially the people like that has the power to intervene because some might have personal interests or things, and it kind of feels probably like behind the scenes House of Cards ish,
Oh, probably.
that what's happening. But at the same time, if you're looking at past, everyone trying to appease him, and then until it exploded, and then they actually had to stop him because it was going out of hand for Hitler. Now, again, we're not saying that Trump is Hitler. What
Oh,
I'm saying
100%.
is look at the patterns, look at personality, what he's doing right now. He is his own person, but at what point do we start worrying? Not just as, oh, I can't wait for him to get out because this has to change. At what point do we get worried? It's like this is an issue here. He's control of this and that thing. Something might happen even before there's an election.
Yeah.
So
And it's starting to happen now. And I don't know if did you watch Dave Chappelle's latest YouTube video?
no, I'm not big on
Okay,
Dave Chappelle.
me neither, but it's definitely worth watching. And he did say something that kind of stuck with me because I guess there are a lot of people who are saying, like with the what was his name, George Floyd,
Mm,
the guy who
yep,
got his knelt on.
yep.
He said that a lot of people are saying, "Why did you make him a hero?" Why, about all this stuff, and he's like, "We didn't make him the hero. You did. He's just the guy that said, okay, he died because of this, so he's our man."
Mm,
And that was unfortunately the catalyst that started all of this. That started we've had enough.
yeah, and it's every moment has a catalyst. Now, what I'm hoping, and again, it goes with the message of Charlie Chaplin. We have to do this, right? So it's like the Wall Street protests back in the day.
Mm,
Yeah, it was big around the world, but did it really change
no,
anything?
it seems like a
That
long time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, but now that being said, this is global. There's a
Yeah,
force, right? You can feel it. It's a bit like the same feeling I got in the Me Too movement. You
yeah,
felt something was shaking up. It's not
exactly. And when
just.
you,
But my point is, I, will it stick? Like when the protest stops and there's things like they have to go back to normal life a bit, because that will eventually happen. I hope so.
yeah,
Um, because that many crowd gatherings with the pandemic, something's gonna happen even more if they keep doing protests. But when things die down, how much will it stick, right? Because it's easy to say, "Hey, this is important," but it's harder to actually stick with it and actually make the change.
this is one where I guarantee you it will stick, just because the groundswell of emotion and support and whatnot is just too big, and it's just getting bigger. And I know, like, personally, it has made me evaluate myself,
Mm.
and started listening more, and I've been learning a lot more, and I've personally felt ashamed about, what's happened in the past, and that's probably the most important thing that I think can be taken out of this for people who aren't directly affected by it, is that it will help you reevaluate how you look at your fellow man going forward.
Yeah, and again, that goes with the beauty of what Charlie Chaplin was saying, right? He in his message, it was a message of hope. It wasn't a blame message either. It wasn't, how dare you all be like this? Is hey, we can be robots, but what we need to be is to change into this, and that's exactly the right reason to have, right? We're all imperfect. We all have done things that now reflecting back, we're like, you know what? Hindsight, not the
Yeah.
best reflection, but to be able to get to that point and learn and be and humanize and put in other perspective subjects like discriminatory things, and change from it and be a better person and not be a bit less robot on certain aspects. That is the key for humanity as a whole. It takes that one person, right, that does not believe that and is in power and then screws it back up, even though with all the changes humanity has done.
Mhm.
So it's uncertain times, but it feels so familiar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the circle of life. It's one of those things that, yeah, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, and okay. That being said, for the movie itself, is there any other things that kind of like, yes, the obvious thing is, what we're living in today. Is there anything else that kind of hit with you that had meaning or made you reflect?
Um, Nothing really in particular, other than what was being depicted in the movie was wrong, and unfortunately, what was depicted in the movie is nowhere near the level of atrocities that were happening at the time. And Charlie Chaplin had said himself that if he knew at that time just how bad things were, he wouldn't have made the movie. But you know what? I'm glad he did.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's an interesting reflection. The thing it was happening in the first weeks, right? So he reflected what he
Hmm.
got as information. It's still an interesting perspective to dive in because yes, they don't know what the atrocity is going to happen, right? In the future, already this what was happening was outrageous and shouldn't be repeated, but it happened, right? Like people got invaded, people got searched, and like door to door. And if you were, a certain race, then you're doomed. It's not something you choose; you're just doomed, right?
Hmm.
And the anxiety they made it into jokes, right? But the scene that Charlie Chaplin is in the suitcase, right? Not knowing it maybe it, not knowing how true that depiction may be, but Jewish people and people who were targeted by the Nazis had to go through extreme situations to survive, live in ways that no human should, right? And it shows the power of the will to survive to humans, and those who, when they do survive, can share their testimonies and hope for the best that next generations learn. Right? I hope that my daughter and her generation and her daughter and her granddaughter, etc., learns for where we're living today with, the pandemic, with the racism that I hope from now will be just part of history, right? And make sure that will never come back, because you can fix a problem, but a cancer can always come back if you don't do your tests, right? If you
Yep.
don't do a checkup. And same thing for humanity. If we don't do a checkup from time to time and re-question, say, okay, the main how racism used to be back in days gone. Is there a new form of racism though?
Yeah, and unfortunately, just based on human instinct, it is not something that will ever entirely go away. But I am hopeful that it will definitely go away as best as possible. I would prefer it to disappear, but you know
Yeah,
that's not up to me. Like human beings, we're not perfect. We will never be the best version of ourselves we can be, but it doesn't mean we can't try.
yeah, and that's a bit the purpose of life, right? Honestly, it's your purpose is not just to yourself; it's society itself, what it reflects, and how what we do right as a society in our generation. I have to say that I'm proud in mine and I'm sad in mine, my generation and the certain like close generations, because I'm glad that we're protesting and hearing our voice, but at the same time, sadly, with you know Floyd's case, the intent is good, but there's always people to take advantage, like the looting, the this,
Yeah,
it sullies what happened and what we should do, and mixes in greed and uses our time and age and situation as an excuse to do something bad, which is not racism, but at the same time, which has no place, is take advantage of
yeah,
situations.
opportunistic.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school, and the one thing that was pressed on me, and I'm sure there are a lot of other religious folk who have heard this. It's unfortunate that nobody listens to it, and is the golden rule: do unto others as you would like them to do unto you.
Mm.
That is like the most basic tenet of life you could ever have.
No, it's true. It's a good principle, not just like in living, but in any situation, managing and wedding,
Yeah,
like in relationship, and it's applicable because it's true. Because again, it comes to what we're saying. We're all humans.
yeah,
I'm a human. You're a human. If I do that to you, it could be done to me. Is it what I want to be done to me? Because we're all, like it or not. Yes, some people have more money. Some people have more status. Some people have more of something, right? But if we look at it on base, everyone is equal. Everyone's on the same page because we're all human. No one. This again. This is just me. This may be for a good conversation on the Frenchie talks about, but no one is attached to divinity or has special, powers. We're all born and we're all gonna die with the same capacities.
exactly. We all come from the same place. We're all gonna end up in the same place.
Exactly.
It's essentially what you do between them that defines you.
Well, this is a very interesting conversation. Thank you very much, Soda, for choosing this movie because I didn't think about it, but it definitely is so relevant to what's happening to today's day and age. And to be honest, even though if these events wouldn't happen, it's a fun watch no matter what because the message is you know eternal.
Yeah,
And the masterpiece of Chaplin is eternal. He is the best of what he did back in his day. And there is no one like him, to be honest. Yes, there's good artists in slapstick, but to have that kind of quality, uh, his movies are classic and rewatchable anytime.
yeah, they all have him to thank for it. And thank you for obliging my pick here because it is a movie. Yes, it is. You laugh, you cry, but it is a movie that essentially makes us face who we truly are deep down inside, and hopefully one day we come out on the other end okay.
Yes, sir. All right. So in that case, Soda, where can we find you, man?
You can find me all over the place at soda underscore the underscore saxman, YouTube, and Twitter. Twitter and Instagram. You can find me weekly on the Schmoes of the North channel with Lou here and our buddy Dave. And honestly, everybody, there's only one thing really you can do in this time, and that's just listen.
Yep. Listen and reflect.
Exactly.
All right, and me, you can find me on Twitter, Norton Schmoes, or on Facebook, Louis Monette, so Monette. And that being said, also, if you're not subscribed, what you doing? Subscribe. Click subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to us on podcast form, subscribe on any platform that you listen to us on. Just by the way, there is a big chance next episode it won't be me. It's gonna be Zelda, and probably for a little while. I'm expecting a kid very soon. We had a couple of moments that we thought it was about to happen. So, Soda, thank you very much for accepting to take over. I can't wait to see what this show looks like under your helm.
Oh, thank you very much, Louis. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
All right. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for listening to the end. For those who stuck to the end, you have a beautiful, beautiful day and stay safe, you all. Bye bye. Mm-hmm.